What the Scottish football jersey has been asked to take care of is an awful lot. For many Scots, an international match becomes a kind of fever chart of the nation. The graph of national self-confidence has for long been affected by what happens on the football park. A good team is a tonic. A bad one hits the country like a virus. Any player who pulls the emblem of Scotland over his head finds at once a crowd. A good result will send Scottish self-doubt into remission. A bad defeat can amount to a national relapse.
This is Wilshaw's fourth of the match. He's the first man to score 4 in a big match at Wembley.
Gamble.
One great goal can restore some confidence.
3-1! A brilliant individual goal!
I mean, we lump national expectations on 11 lads who happen to be good at playing football. And we do that more than any other country in the world. And it is absurd. I mean, there are a lot of reasons, I think, for it. I mean, football is one of the few games that Scotland plays independently on the world stage. And we don't compete as a separate nation, say, in the Olympics or something like that. So football is overwhelmingly more important than it should be in Scotland, and always has been.
Football in Scottish life is about much more than sport. It's really the arena in which Scotland and Scots assert themselves and play a role in international affairs. Scotland is a poor country. That's the main thing to bear in mind. It's not just poor in the financial sense. It's not just poor that people are unemployed. That, of course, is true. But it's poor in the sense that there is no focus for Scottish public life. There's all sorts of minor focuses. There are all sorts of cultural events. There are all sorts of Scottish national institutions. But there's no genuine public focus, no arena for Scotland to assert itself and for the Scottish identity to be seen. And by the way, no place for people to take responsibility for their own actions, so you're forever blaming failures upon the English because they're the guys in charge. And this gets, I think, displaced into football to a very real extent.
When the guys in charge elsewhere remain in charge on the football field, a mild national paranoia can hover near. As one bemused Scottish fan was heard to ask in Argentina, will we ever do anything right? And when we do, we can be just as quick to exaggerate its importance.
Of course, we're accused all the time, as you know, of having a pervasive and very defensive sense of inferiority about the game. I've always insisted that that's not entirely true. I think the truth is that we have a deep-rooted conviction that the rest of the world is conspiring to conceal how marvellous we are.
Scotland had started promisingly enough. The early games against England were sporting contests, so genteel in their intentions that the tickets might have read, "Monocles will be worn." But the popularity of the game with the industrial working classes demanded a more robust commitment. The winning of a Scottish cap came to carry with it a responsibility to match the honour. The players were expected to convey through football, like a code, an expression of Scottish nationality. The need for that expression was always at its most strident against England. A Scotland-England international became a means for Scots to reclaim, however briefly, a separate sense of themselves from the country whose parliament had absorbed their own. The skills of football players became a primitive grammar for expressing feelings that had no other language. The message was essentially a public contradiction of the more patronizing assumptions of the English. On the football field, the United Kingdom still shows the joins. Sporting skill is a declaration of difference, and every goal a celebration of a distinct identity.
There's a strong sense that we should do England every time we meet them, and everybody enjoys it. I certainly love doing that. Sometimes I get the feeling that they would forgive us for failure in the World Cup as long as we continue to do the English.
In 10 minutes, Johnson hit the bar with a hard
The intensity of the rivalry has meant that a Scottish victory is more than a football result.
Doherty takes a free kick, and it's a goal from 60 yards.
And despite the relief of a spectacular Tommy Doherty goal, Scotland's 7-2 defeat from England in 1955 remains a wound in the memory that no amount of wry humour has quite healed. Dressing rooms in England must have been about as comfortable as saunas after the 1967 game at Wembley. Scotland were playing the new world champions.
I would think if anybody was going to say to me, of all the European teams or the world teams that were going to come to Wembley the year after you'd won the World Cup and beat you, I would have said, well, the most likely to do that would be the Scots.
Jim McCalliog. Oh, McCalliog!
You know the way the Scots' minds go. Was being the team to beat them, we were the world champions. Probably to have played Ethiopia or something at Hampden a few weeks later and lost, because that's the kind of team Scotland were in these days. We could rise to the occasion and then lose to somebody that we shouldn't have lost to.
But we were laughing. Dennis and I and Billy had a great laugh. And wee Bolly was on about this wee Alan Ball. He was the hero of the World Cup, sort of stuff. And it was wee Brendan says, call him Jimmy Clitheroe. You know the wee comic, the wee short truthers and that, and the wee squeaky voice, that was Bolly. So I kept calling him Jimmy Quill and tried to give him nutmegs and all that. Well, he was going hairy. The man was going potty. We were just laughing. We weren't bothering because we're so much in talk.
Scotland slaughtered England 3-2. It was one of the most characteristically Scottish victories ever against England. The extent of it was not measured in goals, but in the disdainful superiority of Scottish skills over English sweat.
I think if Baxter had messed about, because I always wanted not only to beat England, but to give him a good thrashing. Bob, give him a good thrashing, which we never did. We never ever did it. And I felt that the only time that we might have done was in '67. And Baxter started, you know, tipping the ball up and sitting out.
But the performance had a meaning beyond statistics. It was a celebration of Scottishness the fans could share in. Scottish fans have always seen themselves as a key part of the team. Just as the Scottish players had occupied the Wembley turf as if they owned it, the supporters took possession of it. They would later do the same with London, naturalising it into a Scottish village for the night. Wembley in 1967 proved that Scottish fans went there to feed the national eagle. It sometimes seemed as if the English went there partly to watch this strange pastime. In 1977, the ability of the Scottish fans to strengthen their sense of identity at the expense of England reached its most spectacular fulfilment. The moment seemed incapable of carrying the weight the supporters wanted to give it. Perhaps the fervour related to the growing desire in Scotland at the time for some form of devolution. It was certainly hard to believe that all that had happened was a Scottish victory at Wembley. It was appropriate that the manager was Ally MacLeod, who would later lead his Tartan army to Argentina. Anecdote has always been an essential part of the Scottish pilgrimage towards the Wembley Way. Like a modern equivalent of the Border Reivers, the fans love to bring back memories as if they were trophies. Defiance of the English is often the point of the story. Playing headers with buses is one of Scotland's national sports only against England. No other country affects us in the same way. When Scotland competed in the 1982 World Cup, an estimated 15,000 fans went to Spain. The only assaults were on the eardrums. The Scottish passion for football was seen at its best.
I don't think any fans in the world bring greater fervour or a more self-sacrificing loyalty to the cause than the Scots do. There are enthusiasms that are comparable, such as the passion of the Brazilians. Mind you, they've had a wee bit more to sustain them over the years than we have. No, I don't think we're being outrageous if we say that we have the most remarkably committed fans in the whole of football.